Hi everybody, this is Lee, and this video is discussing the ways in which racial discrimination and economics intersect, as they often do. People sometimes feel that they are separate issues, but often they do intersect. In this case, you'll likely see why. This is an article at Truthout, Observe and Collect: How Law Enforcement Exploits People of Color in Search of Profit. This is written by Ebony Slaughter of Truth Out. And so, what she is discussing is the issue of civil asset forfeiture and how that's applied under the war on drugs, in which there is racial profiling, racial targeting of ethnic minorities, specifically African Americans, Latinos, and sometimes poor white people. But definitely the element of civil asset forfeiture brings in a severe economic element, that not only are these people robbed of their freedom and their constitutional rights under the law, but they are also denied financial resources, and that's the civil asset forfeiture. And that this is being written about because there may be a reemergence of the targeting of ethnic minorities, and then also a reemergence of the civil rights or civil asset forfeiture underneath the Trump administration. For instance, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has focused on the virtues of civil asset forfeiture in the past, and that also the addition of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, who is also a proponent of civil asset forfeiture, means that there may be no relief or redress under his leadership in the Supreme Court. And so this article goes through a history of state sanctioned exploitation and theft, and that in 1901, at the turn of the previous century, that a young African American man was traveling through Alabama to a dental appointment. He was accosted by a local constable, um, and the constable accused him of holding a debt that he needed to pay, which the young African American denied. And so that meant nothing. He was arrested, his money confiscated, he was convicted, and then he was put on a convict leasing chain gang and rented out. Basically, he was enslaved in 1901. His labor leased, stolen, and then rented out. He was forced to work. And that was 1901. He was powerless to stop that. That there were laws designed purposefully to criminalize African Americans and render them back into slave status underneath the 13th Amendment. And so, for loitering, for walking along the side of railroad tracks, speaking loudly in the presence of white women, were punishable by many years of hard labor and imprisonment, basically slavery under the 13th Amendment. And so these laws represented a collusion of state and private interests through the criminal legal system, and that it continues. It's still happening, and that there was another young African American man, this time in 2007, who was traveling through Arkansas and actually was pulled over by law enforcement, had his car confiscated because the law enforcement official claimed that it smelled of marijuana. And so they arrested him and confiscated his money and utilized a civil asset forfeiture, and then abandoned him on the side of the road with nothing but his clothes on his back. And so this is similar to what has happened in the past, a type of unconstitutional practice, and it's pretty egregious with unsubstantiated charges, violation of the right to due process, and then a profit being made from coerced labor or slavery. And so the motivating factor for civil asset forfeiture, according to this article, is not to serve and protect, and that it is actually to observe and collect. And that the Department of Justice shared $4.5 billion in seized assets with 8,000 state and local law enforcement agencies before 2015. And so there's a financial incentive, and that there are even wish lists that departments make of potential assets to seize. And so people are sometimes, based on state, they have their assets taken without any due process, without any arrest, without any conviction, without any incarceration. And so I'm going to leave a link to this article in the description, and you can see how the intersection of race and class, and then also criminal justice and economic justice intersect. And the fact that currently we have more African American men and women imprisoned in our criminal justice system than had been enslaved in the antebellum South prior to the Civil War. So we have more slaves now than we had then. And I do believe that when there's talk of amnesty, of people who have been wrongly imprisoned or wrongly targeted for racial criminal harassment, that it is the nonviolent drug offenders currently within our criminal justice system who should likely be also in line for amnesty. Nonviolent drug offenders. And I'm going to say that because I'm going to read another article regarding what is happening in terms of opioid usage and how there is a response to that. But yes, I do believe that the people who are residing within our criminal justice system that has been artificially inflated to benefit from corporate use of free slave labor, I do believe that they should be granted amnesty, their records expunged, the slates wiped clean, and then that they should be released with counseling, treatment for any lingering medical effects of the drug usage, and then reintegrated back into society. So I'll leave this here. Good luck.